and let's jump in. You guys can see this, I hope. All good?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. My AI generated headshot. There you go. Awesome. So what we're going to do in hopefully the next 30 or so minutes or 35 minutes to leave some time for questions is the following. We're going to do a quick introduction to understand where people are at today, how people are feeling. I'm then going to talk to you a bit about where we're seeing AI adoption stall as we try and bring AI into the team, as Cheska talked about. I'm then going to talk a bit about Miro and Miro AI, because obviously that's what I do all day long. And then think about how, at least I rethink how you redesign workflows between humans and AI. So with that being said, we're gonna actually kick this off with a couple of polls here, if you don't mind. If you haven't seen Miro Engage, it sounds like quite a few people have come to these sessions before. This is something Cheska has been helping to drive. It's an awesome product, but if you scan that QR code, you should actually be able to answer this question. So please go ahead and give that a go. How much has AI transformed your organization's approach in the past 6 months? Okay, we got a few votes. And you can also, if you want to use your computer, you can go to miro.com/join and use that code up there. Awesome. It's really cool to see so much actually skewing towards the right here, that people are starting to think about this a bit more. 24 votes. We'll give it a couple more minutes here before we go to the next question. So keep your phone close. All right, seems like most people are kind of in the middle, a little over to the right, which is a nice spread. Let's go to the next question here, if I may, which is an open-ended question. So take a second to answer, but would love to understand what are some of the use cases, or how are you already using AI to accelerate your team, or also teams of teams? Like where are you seeing that really come together? Not yet. Making sense of chaotic brainstorming. Cool. Spreadsheet analysis, creative strategy. Agentic coding and client projects. It's awesome.
Oh. It seems like people are definitely different ends of the spectrum for like reducing manual work to much more around strategy and even agentic coding.
Content research.
Very interesting.
Yeah, a lot. Team reflection.
Am I a bit biased that I really enjoy seeing all these questions pop in for Engage? Just feels so much more dynamic.
Definitely does. Okay, awesome. Thank you. This is really cool to see, and I definitely think that this resonates with some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. But also, it's just great to get perspective in terms of where you guys are already seeing value and some of the other use cases that are coming to life. I know for me, our teams are trying to remove as much of that work about work as we can, and having AI take away a lot of that heavy lifting for the things that are more mundane and don't require that empathy or that human intelligence, if you will, so we can have more time to do those things. And I think a lot of that is coming through here with the answers that we're getting, which is great. Then the last question before we jump into the content is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're experiencing today because of AI transformation? Like, we have some in here, so more silos and fragmentation. There's so many tools out there. Everybody's using them. There's less clarity when AI is a part of the team. Is it hard to understand who's actually responsible for what? AI accelerating bad processes. Yeah. Change fatigue. None of the above. Okay.
If some people even want to share a bit more about the challenge, I think we can have 1 to 2 people raise their hands to share a bit more details on this.
Yeah, especially the none of the above. I'd love to, if
Yeah.
someone's willing to, I'd love to hear what are the challenges that you're experiencing, or is it the none of the above because you haven't gone through the transformation yet? If anyone's open to
Okay,
adding here.
thanks, Deb. Lovely.
Hey, I'm always happy to come off mute. You can always call on me to be that person who's the guinea pig. So AI for me has been huge, and I'm a one person show, so obviously, I get to say how it gets used and etc. And it's been huge for me for thought processes. I have ADHD, so I can dump onto it all of the organizational stuff
Mm,
that like drives me nuts and takes me hours just to figure like if someone changes a date on something, it's like, oh my God, and I can just all throw it into AI and I have it all set up so that I can easily change things. And I've found that if I'm thoughtful in it, if I use AI to create the
yeah.
process turns out a lot better than if I just rely on some old outdated process that someone else had done and said, you should do this. And then I'll be like, but why? And AI can help me figure out what actually works for my brain. So,
I love that, Deb. Thanks for sharing. I think that it's a really good use case. And I think that people sometimes forget that you can actually ask AI how to best use AI, right? And that's such a key unlock. I've been spending a lot of time in like Claude Code and tools like that right now as well. And sometimes I don't understand it, and I'm saying, "Hey, teach me this," like I'm a 5-year-old, and it's super helpful to kind of go through that experience. So thank you for sharing. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, there'll be more chances coming up. So thank you for participating in that. That was awesome to see, and keep those phones close because we'll have a couple more examples like this. But I want to talk to you first a little bit about where I currently see adoption stalling when it comes to AI. And again, take this with understanding of my world and my lens. I talk to a whole bunch of enterprise customers, so larger scale organizations. As Deb said, if you're a one-person show, some of this might necessarily reign as true. So just keep that context in mind. But I want to talk to you a bit about this before we go into the solutioning. So ultimately, what I'm seeing today, and what has been happening at least for the past few years here, even before AI came into the fold, is that when we are trying to go from idea to execution, it's extremely challenging today. And I think that we got to a place where we didn't really realize how challenging it's actually become. You have all of these different teams, all of these different functions sitting in siloed countries, sitting in siloed places, working in siloed tools. And everybody thinks that they're marching towards the same goal, but context is across these different functions, these different teams. There's misalignment as decisions try to happen, which ultimately leads to rework. And this, it really creates this chaos. I like to call this the spaghetti slide, where no one really knows how to efficiently get from that idea to outcome in as quickly and as efficiently as possible, which is delaying benefit for you, for your customers, so on and so forth. And what I'm now seeing as AI enters the fold is that it's only getting more challenging. AI is also creating these silos, and a lot of these tools also have AI being added into them, which then means that not only are you already working in a siloed way, but you're adding siloed AI on top of your silos, and then it just starts to get really overwhelming because it's hard to connect those dots when everyone is operating, in this fractured way of working, in my personal opinion. And if we sort of take this one step further, I think what we can all agree on, and we're even seeing it through the chat that you guys are adding your thoughts into, is that we know that AI is powerful. We know that AI is transforming users, people, right? Like I myself feel more productive when I'm using AI in my work. But what we're also seeing, as I just talked about, is that it's adding a new silo into the mix. One of the things that I love about Miro personally, before joining the company, it really helped to remove those silos of other tools. I was living in Google Sheets, Google Docs, Word, Gmail, etc., and it brought that together. But then I started to use AI, and I was again seeing those silos because maybe Cheska's working in Gemini and then coming back to me when I'm working in ChatGPT, and then coming back to her, and we're having to, rehash out that context. And so ultimately, where I think the opportunity still lies within AI, I think there's no doubt that it's helping users move faster, or people move faster. It's how do we bring AI more effectively into the team, and then ultimately into the teams of teams, right? And I think this is the next big unlock that we're going to start to see, and we are starting to see it with some of our customers here. And if we take this one step further, and I think that you guys have already proven this out to some extent with some of your answers earlier, is that organizations are really at different parts of this journey. I think that the majority of people are in this AI in pocket stage where someone somewhere across the company is already using AI, but similar to what Deb mentioned, it could be in that old way of working, right? Adding AI into a broken process doesn't necessarily solve the problem. Then there's the early adopters. So this is where AI is everywhere. Maybe everyone has a Microsoft Copilot license, and there's a little bit of process change coming in, but it hasn't been fully redefined or redeveloped. And then I think that where the smallest cohort is, and where we're going to start to really try to shift to as we go through this transformation, is these early disruptors. And so people who have actually rethought their entire process now that AI is a part of the team, and have actually built in these collaborative team and AI processes, where it's actually not only accelerating individuals, but actually accelerating entire organizations as you move further throughout this journey. So with all of that in mind, I want to again get your pulse. Where do you think your company is on this journey today, if you had to guess? Are you the AI in pockets, AI everywhere, or you're already rethinking, should this process look like this today now that AI is a part of the group? Yeah, this is making sense. Great. Jessica, do I have time to ask someone if they're willing to share?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Does
Yeah.
anyone want to kind of talk a little bit about this? I saw that there are some great comments in the chat, but is there anyone who wants to share about, what it looks like today with the AI in pockets, the AI everywhere, or even the smaller group who's redefining what this looks like? Is there anyone who wants to share?
Feel
Sure,
free to
yeah.
raise your hand and then unmute so we could spotlight you. There was someone there? Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
It's
clear.
William.
Thanks, William. Perfect.
Sure. So
Yes.
I put AI everywhere, but maybe I'll caveat that with there are those who are on the AI journey and it's everywhere, and there are those who are not. And I think without sounding too critical, we created an us and them. Whereas the organization is everyone needs to be AI and you need to be upskilling and you need to do everything. And some people are kind of going, how do I do that exactly? And other people are going like, yeah, we've got this, we've got that, we're doing everything. And it's like, so the organization that I'm currently in, it's a lot like that. There's kind of a mismatch. So if you're in the AI world, it's like, it's a different world. If you're not in the AI world or you're not connected to that, it's a different world. So we're trying to understand, like, how do we create that journey where people who are not kind of fully there yet can kind of align with it? And it's difficult. And we're creating silos. We're creating the silos of the things you talked about already, that everyone should be AI, but well, I find it hard to connect to that in my day to day. Yet when I go over here, it's like, well, that's all I hear. So I think it's a challenge. I don't know if maybe similar organizations are having similar things. So we've got to go so fast.
Yeah.
And everybody's got to go all this way, and people are kind of scratching their heads or wondering, and maybe behind it all, people are worried. People are worried about their job, the future. I have to be AI. My manager told me I must be AI, but I'm still struggling to understand what that actually means. And I don't think we've answered that question, unfortunately, for people.
No, thank you, William. Really appreciate that top up. And I couldn't agree more. I think that, that the tech is one part of it, but it's also the change management and the new ways of working and giving your teams that space to get comfortable. I know one of the things that we've tried to do internally is running what we call these hackathons, where, we actually say, hey, we're going to give our marketing team 48 hours where they're not doing their day jobs and they're focusing in on trying to build something with AI. And I think it's important as leaders to give teams that space to say, you don't have to build the plane while you're flying it here. Let's take a moment so you can understand where that value starts to come in. So thank you for sharing.
Super agree. That was great. Sinisa, feel free to just unmute and.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say that, this meeting is, I'm calling from Norway. I've been living here in the last 8 years. It's a tremendously different environment than most of the people work from this meeting, I would assume. And, this whole discussion is under a premise that we should use AI, and I'm not in that boat. I'm yet to discover that, whether I should use it and to which extent. And it's far easier to see that perspective from a place which is heavily regulated and has standards in the first place, ethical considerations, and only after
Would you mind
that.
maybe sharing? Which company are you with, Sinisa? So
I
at least people
work
have an idea.
I work at a consultancy called Contega. It's a small consultancy in comparison to US consultancies. Let's say it's 200 people, but big enough for Norway, since Norway is only 5 million people country. So it's a really different standpoint here. There are no discussions that starts, hey, what should we do to adopt the AI? It's like, why are we doing this in the first place? So what is that? What are we going to gain? So it's obvious that there's a tremendous push globally to use it for whatever reason that is, whether it's just a marketing push or there's something practical really behind it.
Yeah, appreciate that. Definitely, I think that's interesting seeing the different, perspectives or approaches depending on where you live. Absolutely. Maybe Leo, one more, and then we'll keep going here.
Yeah, I keep it short. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think for us, I'm also working in a digitization consultation firm, and quite big actually. And I think the challenge we are facing currently, also mentioned in the comments, is that it feels like a very much explorative, diverging phase, and to not miss the point where we converge again, right? So why are we why should we use AI there? Why should we implement it here and there, and to somehow stay focused, not be overwhelmed by the pace and so on? And I think that's the challenge I'm actually also facing personally, I realize. So there's so much happening. And also the question, why should we use it there? And then at the same time being able to also test it and use it. And so also just as said, the pace and always this why. So this is for me the biggest point. Not just use it, so not for the sake of it.
Oh, it's a really good point. You definitely want to be thoughtful when you're bringing it into the fold, and we'll touch a little bit about that down the road. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate that. So if we keep going, then we're also seeing if we bring this back to those silos and those challenges, these are also leading to macro business implications for businesses, right? As organizations look to bring AI into the fold, some of the things that we're hearing is that with all of this fragmented AI adoption, companies are spending more than ever on AI, and it's hard to actually see the business impact come through, especially if it's only happening in silos. The second thing is because of these silos, again, it's leading to more fragmented collaboration, making it hard to make decisions quickly, strategic drift, and ultimately frustration as we feel like we're moving faster, but then when we come back as a group, it's broken down. And then the last thing is, I think there's this immense pressure as individuals to move fast, but because we're moving so fast, it's hard to actually keep that line of sight into what's important, what are those priorities, and these are some of the challenges that definitely are top of mind for me when I work with customers as we go through these processes. So maybe actually I'll skip this one just looking at the time here because we have still a bit to cover and I want to get into the more concrete examples. But now I'm going to pivot a bit away from what are some of the challenges that we're seeing in terms of adding AI into the team and talk to you a bit about at least how I've seen Miro AI help, again, using the customers that I've been working with. So ultimately, what Miro and Miro AI is trying to solve here is the removal of those silos, right? We fundamentally believe that AI is only effective if it's actually working with the team, where the team works, using the team's context. As I mentioned earlier, it just doesn't work if I go to Gemini, Cheska goes to Microsoft Copilot, and then we try and come back together. Context gets lost, data goes missing, and it's hard to really bring AI into the fold. And so within Miro, we now have actually brought AI into the platform in a new and creative way to ultimately bridge that gap between where the team is working and where AI is working. So you can actually collaborate as a unit where you have team intelligence and artificial intelligence helping you to streamline going through the discover, define, deliver stage when you're working with customers. And quickly, how this comes to life is actually a new product that we recently released called Miro AI Workflows. And this is what I am using when I work with our customers in terms of how to rethink about their processes. And there are 5 sort of components about this, just to give you an idea of when I say we're bringing AI into the collaboration place, what does that look like? The first is the canvas as the prompt. And ultimately, what this means is we have invested heavily in some technology that actually allows us to use the entire canvas as context for AI. So we believe that when you're working with AI, it's only as smart as the context that you give it. And so anything that's on the canvas, from sticky notes to documents to images to third-party integrations, all of that should be usable because it's important to the team's process with the canvas. And one of the cool things here that I love is that it also has this visual context processing, meaning that if I take a big circle and I highlight something on the board, Miro AI understands the spatial relation to that. So it says, hey, I think that this is important because Jesse circled it. The second would be Miro AI flows, which are the ability, is the ability to chain together and templatize these collaborative multi-step workflows directly within the canvas as well. So helping teams to go from messy brainstorming session to actually concrete outcomes before you even leave the room. That way you don't have to spend, you leave a meeting feeling super motivated, and then you have to spend a ton of time actually thinking about what happened, who owns this, what are next steps. You leave with a V1 version. And then the third thing here is what we call Miro AI sidekicks, which are actual collaborators with you on the canvas that you can create. So they are persona-based AI collaboration tools that could be, whether it's a designer perspective, brand guidelines, expert, et cetera. And these sidekicks can actually work with you and your team to help you refine artifacts, bring in additional perspectives, so on and so forth. But the key thing here is that all of this is actually in the platform. And so when we talk about those silos, this is really where I'm seeing the benefit of customers who I'm working with, is because we're bringing AI into that flow of work. And then the last 2 things here, if you are using AI today, you probably would agree with me that each model, 1, they're changing so fast, and 2, each one kind of has their own place for their own type of content generation. So maybe you want to use Nano Banana for image generation, Claude for document generation. You're able to have that flexibility within the platform. And you can also connect Miro AI to your actual company knowledge bases. So whether it's Gemini Enterprise, Microsoft Copilot, et cetera, because again, AI is only as smart as the context that you can give it. And so by pulling it in with your existing systems of record, this helps to provide all of that context where the team is working as you're collaborating. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples of customers that we've worked with where we've started to see this come to life as AI has actually come into the fold to work with them and their teams. The first would be a company called Endava. If you're not familiar with Endava, they're a global consulting firm. They're over 12,000 employees, and they actually have an AI native delivery model. And one of the challenges that they were facing is, how do you bring AI across 12,000 employees when they have traditional decision cycles that were driving bottlenecks and making it hard to deliver those transformation programs at scale? So ultimately, what we worked with them is bringing Miro in, gave them AI native capabilities across the entire organization, and they were able to compress decision cycles and create repeatable AI first delivery processes. And so already they've been able to reduce certain processes from weeks to days, and they've been able to move away from these isolated pilots to actual AI native first capabilities across their entire organization because AI is playing with them as a team in one collaborative platform. Another example here would be EPAM, which is another global consulting firm. And one of the things that we help them with is actually capacity planning. And so if you're in the product development space, you know already that designers are a sacred resource, and it can take a while to actually get access to a designer to help you to move a project forward. And so with EPAM, we were actually working with a few different teams, and one PM, a couple of engineers, but there was no design support for that particular function. And it was going to take them 6 weeks to get a designer to actually help them out. And they didn't want that 6 weeks to be a bottleneck. And so they used Miro AI and Miro prototypes in a workflow that we put together to actually help them to create those wireframes and those prototypes as quickly as possible. And they were able to take that process down to just 30 minutes. And because the AI content was actually rooted in their company context, their design systems, et cetera, it was able to directly be pushed to Jira after this because it was already at that professional grade, where then the designer came in and reviewed it versus having to actually build it out. So again, talking about compressing these cycles as you rethink where AI comes into the fold. And then the last example I'll give, and then I'll sort of talk about the how in a moment here, is another consulting firm, Smart System Guild, actually out of Switzerland, was working with an organization to help them to overhaul their ERP system. And there were over 40 different people in this project. They had to run 15 workshops, and they had all of this messy data all over the place, whether it was workshop outputs, data inputs, et cetera. And they used Miro and Miro AI workflows to build out a templatized process to actually automate that heavy lifting. So again, they were able to spend more of that time on the actual strategic deep thinking work and way less of that time actually going through the consolidation piece. And in terms of the impact they were able to see here is they went from a 9-month scoped plan to just 4.5-month delivery, because so much of that manual lift and that manual work was accelerated by AI. There was still a human in the loop, right? But it took that initial starting point to get from idea to outcome as quickly as possible. So now if we actually pivot over to the how, at least myself and our teams are doing this with our customers, I want to walk you through at least how I'm rethinking workflows between humans and AI. And ultimately, what I'm trying to do and help customers with is, right now, their process looks like this, right? They have an idea, then there's all of that spaghetti chaos to actually get to that great outcome that they're looking to do. And we really want to think about, should the process look like this? One, and two, if it does, should AI actually have a role to play? And we want to help them to turn that super messy spaghetti-like flow into something that's much more structured, right? Going from idea to workshop to presentation to plan. And obviously this is very simple, but helping them to map out what the process should actually look like, and then where does AI come into the fold. And so now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about at least how we're thinking about breaking down and rethinking workflows to reduce that complexity and boost productivity. This process is, I don't think this for anybody here, this is going to be rocket science, but I think it's important to be thinking about this as you're going through it. We follow this five-step flow. The first stage is to map the existing process, what's happening today. The second is to really strategically think about, where should AI come into the fold, and how can we make it more simple? And I think this kind of goes back to some of the comments that you were having earlier throughout the presentation around, we shouldn't just throw AI in to throw AI in. We need to make sure that it's actually done intelligently and strategically. You then need to actually build, test, and iterate, and then eventually standardize and scale. And then one piece that I think organizations are still struggling with, I even myself struggle with this today, is how do you modernize it, right? AI is changing every single day. How do you keep up with the actual process as you're going through it and as you're learning more? So when it comes to mapping out the existing process, some of the things that I think about is, obviously we use Miro, but in essence, you want to kind of think through, in my opinion, these 4 key things. And the example we're going to use today is doing a 4-week sprint as a consulting company, which hopefully is relevant for some folks here on the call. But first, you want to understand, what are the big stages? What are the big blocks of work? So in this case, week 1 is alignment and scoping. Then you want to go a level deeper into, okay, what are the processes or the jobs to be done that bubble up into that stage? Within it, what are the tools that are using? What are the data sources? What are the key components that we need to think about bringing into the fold? And then this is really where I think it becomes the most critical, is thinking about the challenges, right? Because when we consider adding AI into the team, we need to make sure, as I said earlier, that it's strategically being inserted, and then we're not just throwing it on top as a blanket another tool. And so understanding the challenges helps at least me to really think about, does AI actually have a role to play here, or would it just be adding more noise? And also the estimated time, because one of the things that I think AI is really good at, I'm sure you do too, is for some of these more heavy manual laborious tasks, it can really accelerate that down. Then the second piece, and this is, again, what I think is so key right now, is identifying not only where AI can come into the fold, but also where can you make things more simple? So again, here you got the process, the challenges, and then you want to think about, should AI be involved? And the way that I like to think about it is sort of in three camps. One, we leave it out. AI, it does not have a role to play here. It would be adding complexity, adding noise. Two, AI should help augment this process, right? It should be something where maybe we're in a workshop and we want AI to take all of the workshop notes, call transcript, whatever, and turn it into a summary document. Like, that's a good place for AI to augment. And then in some places, especially as agents start to come into the fold, AI might have a place to actually automate. But it's really important to think about this of, where does that human intelligence still need to play a role? And some of the guiding principles that at least I think about, and there's lots of other people who think along these same lines, is, I really think that humans should continue to be playing in that place where there's empathy needed, contextual judgment, strategic reasoning, et cetera. And I wouldn't necessarily push something to be fully automated unless there was, clear guidelines and scopes, a clear path for it to actually make sense here. And then again, that simplicity piece, I think, is crucial. So many processes today are already messy, complicated, overwhelming, outdated. And you definitely don't just want to throw AI on top of a process that's already not great. You want to use this moment where you're going through this transformation, and actually think about, should the process even be like this? Like, do we actually even need it to be in this way? And then once it's done, this is where teams really have to lean in a little bit, right? And you have to find that time, which is hard, but you need to be able to build, iterate, and test. And so again, in that example of a consultant, 4-week sprint, I actually then started to pull all of these things into a Miro board. Like, okay, this stage of the process is doing interviews. What are those data sources and inputs? Where do I collaborate with my team? Then how do I accelerate that using some of the AI functionality within Miro where it should be accelerated versus where it shouldn't? And then you start to think about, how do we standardize and scale this, right? Once it's been tested, once you've seen that validated impact, it then becomes a lot easier to say, yeah, we're going to push this out to the rest of the team. We've proven it. It works. We're ready to go. But then what I think is probably the most crucial step afterwards, as I said, is continuously modernizing. This is something that I think far too often when we think about a workflow or a process, we can say, hey, great, we cleaned it up. We put it on the shelf and now it's perfect. But as we all know, the world is changing so quickly. You need to be thinking about, how do I continue to modernize this workflow and think about, is it actually still relevant today, even if it was a month ago, right? And so what I actually wanted to do now, if it's okay, is show you a quick example of what this actually looks like for this particular use case. And I can even show you what we did and how we built it out within Miro, in case it's helpful. So if I actually switch my screen share tab, this is a different board, but around desktop research, right? Where someone today would have to go in and do all of this research on their own. And what we started to think about is, okay, where could AI help to accelerate? So you'll see here that we have some key sources, like an engagement charter, some brand guidelines, external websites. And then we've actually started to pull through a flow in Miro terminology, but an AI workflow that goes out and scrapes these websites. It does the external research for us. And then ultimately it buckets them into a table. And then it actually puts it into a slide deck template here. And again, this is all fake data for the purpose of the presentation. But then what I'm able to do is actually go in and just review that final output, keeping the human in the loop. But this is just one stage of that process, right? If I open up the sidebar here, you'll see that we've actually broken this out into a step-by-step process within Miro, where it starts with the desktop research, which then flows into running the customer interviews, which then flows into doing the steer code review. And then even having places for things like client workshops where everybody can come together to give that feedback. So this is really where, I'm starting to think about how do I take these maybe outdated, standardized, slightly old school processes and add that flavor onto it where AI exists and AI accelerates, but you still have those moments, where the great, powerful human thinking and strategic judgment starts to come into the fold. Hopefully that helps. Awesome. So we're almost at the wrap up for my content, and would love to talk and hear some questions or other thoughts. But in terms of some of the key takeaways when I think about AI workflow redefinition, I just covered this, but simplify first, automate second. It's crucial that we don't just throw AI on top of a already complex process. The second is really being thoughtful about how AI should actually be a part of the team, right? Should it automate? Should it augment? Or should they stay on the bench? Proving it out, then scaling. This is something I think is really important because, again, you don't want to add confusion, add complexity. If something actually doesn't work, off the bat, you don't want to add in that noise. And then lastly, continue to build these learning loops. Like once you actually bring AI into the team, you have a new process, a new workflow, make things that continue, as things continue to evolve in the platform and in the product, continue to build in these learning iteration loops. And I actually was reading an article from Bain, which is another consulting company, and they said, treat a workflow like a product. And I loved that, right? And especially being a product company ourselves, continuously doing discovery, definition, and delivery, and having this backlog of improvement as you're going through. So let's get your phones out one more time. As we've been going through this, I would love to kind of understand, is there a particular workflow right now that would actually benefit rethinking that is top of mind for you?
While people are also a bit of a shameless plug. So there was some interest in how do we actually create some of these or how do you replicate some of these workflows that Jesse's showing for yourselves. I've just linked something in chat called AI Playbooks, where you can actually find a lot of like the key use cases that we're seeing consultancies and agencies adopt, and basically use that for yourself. So that can be a starting point for you if you're very early on in your Miro AI journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really interesting to see how different everything is.
Yeah, lead generation.
I know we have while we have this on, just being mindful of time. We have 15 minutes, so I'm sure some people have some questions. So I'm opening up the floor now for questions or maybe even spicy takes or perspectives that you might have given, like what you're personally seeing in your company or your org. So if you want to share or ask a question, just feel free to raise your hand and go off mute, and I'll be happy to spotlight you. Okay, silence is always like people are thinking. That's how I'm seeing it.
It's funny having so many AI notes in the call.
Yay. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Hey. Oh, that's a cool name. Is that I'm assuming Dare is the company or is the studio name? Please, I can see two of you, so feel free to go off mute.
Thank you. You're on mute.
There. I'll just unmute you if you don't mind. Ooh. There. Lovely.
Hi, thanks. We're calling from Antwerp, Belgium. We have actually very little experience with AI, and we just use it, to translate or to get some information. So for us to build an AI assistant is like very conceptual and abstract. And I was wondering how generic AI assistant needs to be. So how specialized, how many actually do you need? How many assistants would you need? Or can one assistant have different roles?
It's a really, really good question. And I think that there is a few different ways to attack it. So if you're just getting started with AI, I think that the most basic form in terms of how people are exploring it is using LLMs or chat-based interfaces, right? Like ChatGPT or Gemini Enterprise to understand how to accelerate. Agent building, I think, is a whole nother level. So a level bigger. And I think that one of the things that I would encourage you to try, I don't know if you've seen Google's Gem product, if you're using Google or anything like that, but you can actually create these gems that are pretty cool where it's quite simple. You just give it a role, a persona, a task, if you're already using Gemini today, and then you chat with that persona. So instead of it being a generic LLM, it actually has a role that you've given it. And that's very similar to our Sidekicks product. So if you are a Miro customer, you can also do this in Sidekicks, where you can create these simple things where they can take on these different personas. And to build them, I would actually encourage you to try using AI to do it, which might sound a little crazy, but you can say, hey, I think that I can build an agent or a gem or a sidekick to help me with creative brief writing, let's just say, as an example. This is how I would do it today. This is what I think good looks like. Can you help me create the prompt that I need to make that happen? Which is something that I do all the time because things change. So that would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Maybe just something to add there anecdotally, like we've seen very crazy, not even crazy, fun use cases for sidekicks where we have colleagues replicating, like let's say they have a product designer in the team, and they need almost to have a sparring partner. They actually create the sidekick to replicate how a design voice would sort of look like to aid them in the process. So things like those, you can like have fun, I guess, and play around with it. It's one suggestion I'd have. Yeah. Anyone else has a question? Thank you, by the way, for asking that. Thanks for the thoughtful
I also
question.
love Antwerp. Beautiful city that you live.
Haven't been. Cool. Okay. That
Definitely
goes on to the list. Okay.
Great.
Any other question from everyone? If there's no question, I do have one for the audience. Because I know there's a lot of people here coming from more strategic or business consulting sort of work. I'm curious to know what sort of workflows or use cases in your business you'd love to hand off to AI, but you're really not sure whether it's ready for that yet. Is there anyone here who, especially the ones doing more strategic consulting work?
Can I say a thing, maybe?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, just it's a really important question because it's kind of the most of the applications for the strategic work are actually quite technical right now, even from strategic standpoints. You have data folk, so they have data strategy. For example, they're trying to integrate into companies, but it's not like a strategy for itself in a way. So it's really difficult what to pinpoint here. Can we exchange the regular conversations and facilitation that we have with people with AI? And why would we want to do that? That's my question.
That's an interesting next question for all of us to answer, I guess, because that's where you essentially deliver value as advisory services, right? The sort of either the process, the experience, or the knowledge that comes with it. And as consultants or agency folks, like how do we redefine sort of what we deliver to customers ultimately? Maybe. Okay. Okay, thank you again. Ladies, maybe you can unmute and share your own thoughts.
Sorry, I'm building on the last question. Is there a catalog of assistants?
You mean for Miro?
No, in general. So if we want an assistant, is there somewhere a list of all kind of assistants you could think of? Because I'm sure that we don't even realize how many assistants we could create. So if there's a list somewhere, that would be interesting to choose from.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there's no shortage of, I don't think there's probably one giant list out there somewhere, but lots of examples. I know YouTube videos are super helpful with what people are thinking about and how they're trying to build stuff. But again, I would start simple. Like if you're just getting started, you know, we
ask AI.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I also like to do the ask AI to teach me something like I'm a 5-year-old prompt, right? Because
I love that.
it's complicated, but it's helpful when you think about it in building blocks or Legos or something like that. It makes it a bit more digestible.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, William?
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. I see a lot of great stuff. I kind of touched sidekicks a little bit, but I haven't had played with it much. But I spend a lot of time creating Miro boards, but maybe it is, but I don't see anything where I could just type a prompt and I'll say, create me 10 frames for this workshop with this output, okay, with some interaction points, with some relevant information that flows through that will get me this kind of output. Go. I don't see that, which would be really cool. I don't know if you've thought about stuff like that, but what saved me a lot of time is if I could spend less time kind of creating things. And then if it wasn't, I could then kind of pair program with it or vibe code with it and go, hey, okay, tweak this, tweak that, do it. And the canvas then comes alive. So I've seen stuff kind of in my world where you can have automatically generated UIs, you can have stuff created, but is Miro thinking about anything like that where you could just tell it what you want and it will create it?
Yes. Short answer. I guess Jesse would know a bit more about this, but that's definitely something on our minds. Like in the background, we actually there's this one thing that the team is developing around creating from a prompt, creating assets or templates within a frame that I'm happy to show you what it looked like, or we're happy to show you what it looked like
Cool.
from some of the things you just shared today. So, but Jesse, while I'm trying to screen share, maybe you can also speak
Yeah, it's
to
very
what you know.
topical. I'll stop sharing my screen. You can do yours, William. Especially in my role, it's been something I've been also begging for a long time. Is you go into a conversation, I have an idea of what I want to build out. Those flows that I showed you earlier, you actually can. It's coming soon. Right now, it's just for Miro as we're testing it out, but you can connect it to then frame generation to build you those templates that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So your prayers or your ideas are going to be answered. This is an example of one that Jessica did earlier coming out of the session, actually. So, you're a facilitator, you just ran a discovery session. Here's what was gathered, their AI transformation maturity, how they're using AI to accelerate their teams, the biggest challenge. And then in essence, create a frame that has theme summary, opportunity map, and recommendation first move. And then if you zoom out, you'll now see that this frame has actually been built with the sticky notes and the template and the structure just using Miro AI. And so this is a great jumping off point.
So maybe I'm again, we're a bit biased, but hopefully this gives you an idea of sort of the direction we're moving towards.
Does. It's good. It's good. I can see where it can go because if you put in the content generator and the generation of the images and the flows and things like that, you could make it really graphical. So again, it just becomes like Gen AI. You just prompt it and kind of vibe code with it and you get it to what you want. So yeah, cool. That will simplify my life in the future.
Hopefully. And again, this sort of solves the idea on like always starting simple. I guess like because people are either there's a bit of a skills gap in terms of how to prompt, like what are the sort of things that we would need to create down the line. So hopefully this is that this solves a bit of the blank canvas problem and the simple step at least to get you to adopt AI within Miro.
Yeah,
Any
cool.
other?
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, William. Any other questions or oh no moment? That's also curious.
I do have a question, although it's like 3 minutes before the.
Yeah. Well, this will be the last one, though. I hope that's okay with everyone.
So I actually have two, so you can choose which one to answer. So one of them is you mentioned that you can connect your own like data, right, or database. I'm wondering like how is it like do you just bring links and like AI is fetching this information, or you also can like connect MCP to your like company database and so on, and like on the organization level? This is one question. The second one will be like also how do you track the amount of tokens that used, right? Like you are, is it free? At some point I'm like reaching the limit because I'm like really, so this is interesting for me to understand. Yeah, thanks.
Good question. It's not free, like most things in life here. But there are lots of different ways to look at it from a token perspective, which we can share information on. In terms of how it actually works, both of the routes that you talked about are possible. So right now, the basic way to add data sources is actually using our integrations. So if you're using Google Suite or Microsoft Suite, you can bring those files into the canvas by copy and pasting. And then our AI can actually read those files using your company security guidelines. So if you have access to the document, then you can give Miro access to read the document, etc. But we also just released our MCP server. So the second thing that you're talking about is also possible, where you can actually connect other systems into Miro, where you can go from like code to diagrams and diagrams to code and all sorts of stuff. So the limit does not exist, but both of those routes that sort of you're talking about are possible.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking the question.
Hey, thank you. Thanks. Well, before we have a minute left, so definitely need to make sure to thank everyone first. Very, very happy for all the interest and sort of the questions and ideas you've spurred on along the way throughout this Reframe series. It's been such a delight to host you guys, and because of the positive response we've been getting, we will continue the series. So by end of April, we'll have a bi-weekly learning session to basically spark ideas around how we need to rethink consultancies. So thank you for being part of this pilot run. And thank you to Jesse. He's one of the best, seriously, people. Like, please connect with him on LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing all of what you know about how to transform orgs, especially in this AI shift and how to use Miro as part of that. There's a lot of things around simplifying and being clear on the intent. I think for me, that was one really key takeaway on how do we, what are the areas for AI to augment us to not even consider or to help simplify the process a bit more. So thank you. And thanks to everyone for being here. Have a great rest of the day. See you in end of April. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.